So by this point, you should have 16 goals. If you haven't done that yet, go back to the first video. I'll link it below and do that first. Otherwise, you're gonna be starting from a weird place here today. So where do we go from here? A few things. Today we're basically going to cover some acid tests, if you will, of your goals. Are they really of the importance and quality that you'll need in order to stick to them and see them through? So where we go from here is basically taking those 16 goals and doing a couple of things. One, we're going to write very detailed descriptions about them, and then we're going to put them through a series of tests to make sure that they're actually interesting and important enough to you that you'll see them through, especially when times get hard. So let's get to it. First thing, we're going to write detailed descriptions of every single goal. So of all 16, you're going to go through and you're going to write from the perspective of once I have accomplished this, or once this is complete, I will, so on and so forth. Here's an example of one that I wrote. So if you remember from last time, one of my goals is spend significant time in nature. And here's my detailed description of what that looks like once it's complete. So I wrote, once this is complete, I'm going for explorations multiple times each week. Maybe I'm making videos to document, share, etc. I get to know fundamental facts about things I'm seeing, like tracks, animals, vegetation, etc. So you're going to want to do that with each of your goals. Think about it from the end. Once this is complete, I will, so on and so forth. And really let yourself focus on it. Take time to do this. You seeing what the outcome of achieving that goal is will be a key component to you keeping yourself motivated through this process. Not just building momentum at the beginning, but sticking through it when things start to get weird or start to go sideways or there's a fork in the road. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. How do you handle that? Writing these detailed descriptions is really important to get yourself really strongly connected to that goal. The next thing that you're going to do is list for each of the goals why you want to accomplish it. This is actually really interesting because it can uncover things that are like very at your core. For instance, why I want to spend significant time in nature is because I want to feel a connection to the natural world and all of the intriguing pieces of it. Contributes to my spirituality, I think, contributes to calmness and improves my perspective. So it really, there's a deeper layer there than just, there's cool things to see and so I want to see them. I'm counting on all of those things to be a piece of why I want to do that. And again, this is just further clarifying for me what I'm going to become as I'm going through achieving this goal. If you're having a hard time figuring out why, then you should spend some time with it. There might be a really good reason that just isn't immediately coming to mind. But if you spend some time trying to figure out why and you just can't, or the why actually feels pretty flimsy, then you might want to consider whether or not this is of the caliber that you need to have your goals at. Some of the goals you might have to let go, and that's okay. At the end of the day, you want everything that's on there to be really impactful, really important, and really invigorating to you. If you're having a hard time with the motivation aspect of this and finding things that seem high caliber enough, one thing to consider is that you should be actually choosing goals based on what will it make you to achieve that goal. Meaning, how will it change you as a person? How will it improve your perspective, your experience, your way of thinking, your way of being? You don't want to worry about if your goal is to make $1 million next year, that it's truly the money. It's what you become in the pursuit of achieving that goal that's actually valuable. Think about it from that perspective. Focus on things that are going to, at your core and at your being, make you more into the person that you want to be by achieving them. This way you stay focused on that experience versus just the tangible output from the goal itself. Next, we're going to go through a few tests to see if your goals actually stand up to some fundamental criteria that will help ensure that they're strong enough, essentially. One is an acid test, we could call it, which is basically sit and contemplate your goals strongly, feel very connected to them, and then as you're thinking about it, think about all the things that you'll need to accomplish it. Think about all the things that you'll have to do. And then simply ask yourself, is it worth it? Is the outcome of the goal worth all of the activity, maybe the pressure, maybe the learning of a new thing? Is it worth it? And if it's kind of wishy-washy, maybe yes, maybe no, I'm not sure, that's probably not a strong enough goal, and you should really consider discarding it and replacing it with something else, kind of going back a step and reconsidering some things. And that's okay. It's all right if this takes a while, if you get the right things at the end of the day. Now there's some additional questions that we can ask to really test the strength of the goals. And some of these are pretty close to each other, but sometimes asking the same thing but using slightly different words or language kind of gets you to a better place and a more right answer. The first thing that we're going to consider is refusal versus complacency. And this test is basically saying, will you build refusal against certain things? Meaning, will you refuse to put in low effort to work on your goal? Will you refuse to put out poor quality work in order to achieve your goal? Will you have that level of expectation for yourself? Or will you be kind of complacent about it? Will you do things halfway, not quite as good as you could? Will you kind of daydream and spend your time doing other things and not really focus on achieving your goal? If you have that complacent attitude toward those, again, they're not going to be strong enough for you to see it through, and you should strongly consider going back and reevaluating what that goal should be. The next one is decision versus maybe. And I, in normal life, can be pretty indecisive. So I had to think about this one for a while, which is kind of a weird thing to say, I guess, kind of being indecisive about this. But it does make sense to me. So decision versus maybe means as you're working through achieving your goal and you think about all the things that you'll have to do to make it reality, when you come to a fork in the road and you have to make a decision, do you have confidence that you will be able to be decisive in those moments, or will it stall you and essentially have you saying something like, maybe this just isn't meant to be, and let it go? The reason that I had to sit with this one for a little bit was because I thought, well, sometimes it's really good to sit and think about what you do before you're doing it, because then you're doing something that's more thought out, less impulsive. Maybe you're making a better decision by taking some time to think about it. That's not what he's saying here. What he's saying is, will it cause you to lose your momentum in such a way that it'll actually force you into a spot where you're thinking, oh, I should just not even worry about achieving this goal because there's all of these things and I don't know what to do. And I think it's okay to not know what to do sometimes and to take time to figure it out, but you need to be able to maintain the momentum of seeing your goal through while you contemplate those decisions, because ultimately it results in a decision. So there's your decisiveness. So think about that one. When decisions have to be made, do you think the goal is important enough that you will be decisive in the end, or will you get stuck in a maybe place and start having thoughts about, well, maybe this just isn't meant to be and I should do something else? The next thing is want versus apathy. This one is interesting to me because it talks about just, to me, what seems like a very remedial thought of, do you want your goal enough? And that feels a little bit childish to me, but I think that it's valuable in the sense of you're kind of asking a similar question to the previous ones, but maybe it's just more direct to somebody to say, hey, are you going to be apathetic about this, or are you really going to do what will need to be done in order to accomplish it. And if you feel that over time you're going to grow pretty apathetic about it, then these aren't the goals that you should have. Whatever you see yourself becoming pretty apathetic about over time, you're not going to be able to carry yourself through it. So you should reevaluate. Take those out, figure out what should replace it. And the last one is promise versus fear. And this one I had to sit with for quite some time too, but the idea here is basically, can you promise yourself that you will achieve the goals that you have on your list? And what he means by this is you should essentially be strong enough of character that it's important to you to keep your promises, and that it's very important to you to keep your promises to yourself, not just to others. And so the idea here is, as things are getting tough, or as the work is accumulating and you're having to piece achieving this goal together through a series of small steps probably, will you be able to maintain and sustain that promise that you made to yourself that you're going to achieve this, and all of the wonderful outcomes that you will reap at the end of the day because you kept your promise and you saw it through? Or will you essentially kind of cave to fear, and every setback will look like it's the end of the game for that goal? If you think you're essentially going to cave to fear because the goal is too scary, too big, too overwhelming, then you should probably evaluate it. And this is just a bit about being honest with yourself. You know, everyone's not meant to go through what you need to go through to build Amazon. There's certain people who are able to take that on and certain people who probably aren't, and that's okay. Just, again, be really honest with yourself. If something is just too scary of a goal to accomplish, and you don't think you're going to be able to see yourself through it, and you're not going to get that huge payoff of becoming the person that you want to be because you have gone through the experience of achieving your goal, then start somewhere else. That's okay. Redraft your goals and then come back to this step. So go through this process, and I will see you in the next video.